Hello friends, it's the 5th of December 2021. This is the second video I'm making. I misplaced the camera over the past week and found it in a pocket. The past week I've made all 4 bulkheads and the transom for the Paradox. The circular holes and like the cutout for a hatch in the forward number 1 bulkhead I'm leaving for later. The number 1 bulkhead I'm thinking I might try to find like a pre-made marine hatch, waterproof hatch that I can use there. So I'm either looking at something that's just one of the round hatches, which seems to be the most stable, or possibly one of the oblong rectangular ones. But I can't find any of the rectangular ones with the dimensions I really want. Some of the circular holes for like the steering lines and things like that I've left to cut out later with a circular saw, including like the hole on the transom for the little circular hatch there, deck plate type hatch thing. Not sure if for that one I'll find an extraordinarily large circular saw, or just let's go take a look and see what's out there first. The all-stars of this past week have been simply a 7-inch circular saw. If you put the blade a little bit deeper than your plywood, you can do remarkably good freehand work with it, as long as you have a good line to follow. I also got some of these weird-looking goggle-like safety glasses, which work really well for keeping chips out of the eye, especially when doing quasi-freehand circular saw work. The other big all-star is my Gurney. I got this from the local university surplus a couple years ago as a project table for 65 US bucks, US dollars. It is the perfect thing for laying out plywood sheets. It has a 500-pound capacity, so roughly a little over 250 kilograms. It's adjustable in height, so when you're laying things out, you can raise it right up. When you're cutting things out, you can drop it down and use sawhorses, the same height as sawhorses, and cut in between things. And you can roll it all around the shop, and it's really been perfect for that. And then one of these things, which I feel like a medieval squire in, but Roger Barnes, Dinghy Cruising Association fame, and I also like his book. He uses these from the Smock shop in the UK, and they work really well to keep the sawdust off whatever you're wearing up top, and they're better than any type of Carpenter's pockets I've used before, at least for the work I'm doing here. So those have been pretty useful tools. I also got the 4 side panels cut out, the 4 1/2 sections for both sides. For all of this, for lofting, anytime I have a curve that's not a straight line, I just take some finishing nails, hammer those in at each of the control points for the curve, and then grab just this kind of like 1 by 3/8 inch piece of kind of somewhat flexible material I just picked up. It's a 1/4 inch by 1 1/8. I just picked up at the hardware store while I was getting a few other things. And so I'll usually bend this against the nails, so the nails are on the inside of a concave curve. And then I'll use clamps to make sure that this is tight against all the nails. Sometimes I'll use weights as well to keep it forced up there. And then I'll basically just draw against the batten in between the nails to get my fair curve. A couple places where I couldn't really do that, like at the bow end of the sides, the curve's a little bit too much for this piece. I use a flexible aluminum, I think it's aluminum ruler that I have that's about 15 inches or so, and I can kind of make the curve up out of that in sections. And you can kind of watch to make sure that it does still give you a fair curve even though you're moving it. It's long enough that I think there's like 4 or 5 stations, 100 millimeters, about 4 inches apart, and that ruler still works pretty well for making that curve. The next things I'm looking at here are probably looking at the deck beams and at the same time possibly the cabin beams. I'm thinking of laminating them out of like 1/4-inch strips of plywood. You know, I'll see what the store has for that. Probably looking at making a jig out of some 2x4 handy panels of plywood, 2 foot by 4 foot handy panels. Basically just lofting out the curve from the drawing for bulkhead number 2, excuse me, at the full length, and you know, creating a jig out of that and doing them. If you were to take the panel as it sits in the boat and rotate it down 90 degrees away from you so it's flat in that orientation. If that works and that's the jig I make, it'll be easier to see then. The big challenge here is it's winter in Washington State in the United States. And so I'm using Silvertip epoxy, system 3, and it's good down to 35 degrees, but at night it gets bloody cold here. So I've ordered a indoor-outdoor thermometer, and the outdoor thermometer will be down here in the garage where I'm working, so I can get an idea to make sure that the temperatures aren't dipping below that 35 degrees Fahrenheit point. It's about 2 degrees Celsius. So we'll see. I'm gonna have to get a comparison for the temperatures in our garage because it's heated by the house. There's rooms above it and adjacent to it, and to see if it retains heat well enough through the night that I can still work with it. My understanding is you can, once you get below that temperature, there's a risk of like the epoxy getting hard without properly setting up. So obviously my working times are going to be greatly extended at the temperatures here. But it's about probably the mid 30s, mid to low 30 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 0 to 1 Celsius out. And I can sit here pretty well. I've been working, but in just a t-shirt and a kind of waffle layer on top of that, fine. So I'm hopeful that the garage might retain enough heat that I can do the epoxy work without waiting too long. At the same time, I can see my breath a little bit. So that's where I am in the past week. It was about one bulkhead, or the transom a night. Took Wednesday off. Just been kind of going at it gangbusters. I'm aware that this is the stage of the project where things look like they're going the fastest. I have the pieces I can lay out and get a feel for the size of the boat. I put some blue tape down on the garage floor here and kind of set the bulkheads up with clamps to get a feel for it. But a lot of the details now just don't produce these large pieces that are quite as satisfying. But I appreciate the quick progress and the feeling of accomplishment that this stage gives. That's all I have for now. Take care.